Good evening. You're watching AWANI Tonight with me, Soraya Mia. The Selangor State Assembly will be dissolved on Friday to make way for the state elections. This comes 2 days before its term officially ends on June 25th. Dr. Azmi Hassan weighs in on how the political coalitions will perform in the upcoming polls.
It looks like the Perikatan Nasional are very confident, especially in Negeri Sembilan and Selangor. But as I see it, it's not a clean sweep for either side. It won't be a landslide, but the status quo will remain, meaning that the three states of Pakatan Harapan will remain with Pakatan Harapan, and the other three states will remain with PAS. But if Perikatan Nasional can make a few seats, can win a few seats that currently held by Barisan Nasional or Pakatan Harapan, then it's a moral victory for Perikatan Nasional.
Ahead of the state polls, Deputy Prime Minister Datuk Seri Fadilah Yusof called for Perikatan Nasional to join the government and move away from politicking. Dr. Azmi discusses whether having a unity government without an opposition is the right step for Malaysia.
What the opposition is good doing right now is to create a perception that they can form the next federal government, not doing the opposition job as a check and balance for the current unity government. No, they are not doing that. So personally, I agreed, I concurred with Datuk Seri Fadilah, just because to stop the rumor or to stop the strategy of the opposition of trying to create the perception that they want to or they can form the federal government, meaning that the federal government need to defend this particular thing. So when they need to defend this particular perception, the federal government cannot do their core job, which is administering the country.
Given the experiences of several politicians in Perikatan Nasional, Azmi said joining hands could be beneficial for the country.
Oh, we have another 4 years plus for the federal government to function, to finish its mandate. So I guess it is best for the people if Perikatan Nasional join, but it's going to be a problem for the current government to distribute ministers, deputy ministers. It's going to be very, very difficult. But generally, I think it's better for Perikatan Nasional to join the government because they have a lot of experienced politicians there. Whether it will work or not, I think I have trust in our Malaysian politicians. They can do the possible with the impossible in the background.
Meanwhile, the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission has cleared Judge Datuk Muhammad Nazlan Muhammad Ghazali after investigating allegations of corruption and conflict of interest in handling the case of Datuk Seri Najib Razak. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim told the Dewan Negara today that the MACC also found no criminal elements in its investigation of Nazlan, and this was agreed upon by the Attorney General's chambers.
Berkenaan konflik kepentingan Hakim Nazlan, isu yang sama telah diputuskan oleh Mahkamah Persekutuan ketika menolak permohonan Datuk Seri Najib Tun Razak bagi mengemukakan keterangan tambahan atau keterangan baru. Dengan kata lain, isu konflik kepentingan telah diputuskan secara muktamad oleh Mahkamah Tinggi Negara.
Nazlan convicted Najib on 7 charges of abuse of power, breach of trust and money laundering involving 42 million ringgit from SRC International. Najib was sentenced to 12 years jail and fined 210 million ringgit.
Social media platform Telegram has agreed to work with local authorities to fight cyber crimes via the application. Communications and Digital Minister Fahmi Fazil said the agreement was made after a meeting between Telegram, the police and the Malaysian Communications and Multimedia Commission today.
The meeting was attended by Telegram representatives, the Inspector General of Police Tan Sri Akril Sani Abdullah Sani, the Federal Police's Criminal Investigations Department Director Dato' Ayub Khan Marin Piche, and senior police officials at Bukit Aman. Fahmi said his ministry has received many complaints regarding the content and misuse of the application, including the sale of pornographic materials and drugs, as well as investment scams, but no action had been taken from Telegram so far. According to Fahmi, since January 2020 to May 2023, the total losses suffered by Malaysians as a result of various scams via Telegram have exceeded 45 million ringgit.
The stamp duty rate for shares traded on Bursa Malaysia securities will be reduced to 0.10% from the current quantum of 0.15% effective July. Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim said the measure will directly reduce the cost of securities transactions and make the Malaysian stock market more competitive.
I'm confident that this step will stimulate the market and enhance its attractiveness. The increase in market liquidity will attract more domestic and foreign funds into the Malaysian stock market, thereby encouraging SMEs to pursue initial public offerings and facilitating public listed companies in raising funds to expand their businesses and create job opportunities.
The measure, however, would be subject to a maximum cap of 1,000 ringgit per contract. This was among the measures the Finance Ministry and Securities Commission have identified to enhance the capital market. Another strategy is to attract a larger pool of investors to support financing for SMEs and the new economy by introducing policies to facilitate and attract the setting up of family offices in Malaysia. They will also look into more conducive tax and incentive policies to drive greater domestic direct investment.
In a separate matter, the Prime Minister called for companies to provide reasonable allowances to interns to cover daily expenses. However, the government will not implement a fixed policy and leave it to companies to decide, seeing that internship programs are not mandatory.
Disebut internship programs. Tetapi mereka juga menyebut kita faham bahawa internship itu bukan pekerjaan biasa. Itu hanya peluang pendidikan awal. Tetapi bagilah sedikit allowance yang menasabah. Ya. Kerana perjalanan dia, tambang dia, makan dia. Tapi dia faham, bukan upah, bukan gaji. Jadi kerajaan tidak akan tetapkan satu kaedah yang jelas kerana ini program internship yang tidak boleh dipaksa.
Head of Social Policy and Human Rights at Bait Al-Amanah, Simrat Raj Kaur Dillon, meanwhile suggests that the government recognizes interns under labor laws. She says this is a move towards a more transparent and sustainable internship system.
So currently, under our Employment Act, it does not recognize interns as formal employees. That's a very simple example that we can look at. So therefore, if you do want to grant them basic rights through employment, for example, you want to make sure that they have minimum wage, let's just say, right? You want to make sure that they are granted similar protections to everyone like other employees in the company. There needs to be some sort of amendment to these laws to recognize them as employees. Whether you want to recognize interns as employees or whether you want to amend the law to introduce interns under the Employment Act.
She also highlighted the roles of companies and the Human Resources Ministry in this matter.
Short term, I think private sector should look at reforming their own structures as well. Whether that means, this means that they should take into consideration their own companies, capabilities and what they can afford. This means that companies have the discretion to decide whether I want to pay my intern 1,000 ringgit, for example, which is below minimum wage, but that's a basic allowance, or do I want to pay my intern 1,500, right? But I think in the long term, the government should introduce a compulsory internship fund, and this would help to replace the Human Resources Training Fund. And I think the Human Resources Ministry definitely has a role to play in this.
Meanwhile, she said universities also play an important role in protecting the rights of interns.
I think this is incredibly important and it definitely helps the students. However, I think it shouldn't stop there. Most of the time when it comes to vocational internships, universities help students get the internships, but they don't necessarily ensure that their students' interests are protected within that internship position, right? So I definitely think that universities, when encouraging students to go for vocational internships, especially if it's compulsory, there needs to be more oversight by the university to ensure that their students' rights are being protected, that the internship is valuable to the student, and that it is in the best interest of the student, and as well as whether their interns are being paid or not.
Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with Chinese President Xi Jinping as the top U.S. diplomat wrapped up a rare two-day visit to Beijing. In his address to Blinken, Xi said the two superpowers had candid and in-depth discussions and told Blinken that the world needs a stable China-U.S. relationship. According to state media, Xi said that China respects U.S. interests and does not seek to challenge or displace the country. The meeting could help facilitate a summit between Xi and U.S. President Joe Biden later this year. Biden and Xi last met on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Bali, Indonesia, in November and pledged to communicate more frequently. Although relations have since deteriorated over issues ranging from Taiwan to espionage concerns. At least 96 people have died in two of India's most populous states during the past few days as the country grapples with a heat wave. Authorities in northern state of Uttar Pradesh and eastern Bihar have warned residents aged over 60 and those with underlying health conditions to stay indoors during the day.
All 54 deaths in Uttar Pradesh were reported in Balia district, with most of them being over 60 and having pre-existing health conditions that may have been aggravated by the extreme heat. Medical officers reported some 300 patients being admitted to the district hospital for various ailments due to rising temperatures. Authorities have also cancelled leave applications for medical personnel in Balia and provided additional hospital beds to accommodate the influx of patients. The district experienced a maximum temperature of 43 degrees Celsius on Sunday, surpassing the average range by 5 degrees. In Bihar, 35 of the 42 deaths occurred in the state capital of Patna, where over 200 patients are being treated for diarrhea and vomiting. Patna recorded a maximum temperature of 44.7 Celsius on Saturday.
Indonesia and Elon Musk's rocket company SpaceX launched the country's largest telecommunications satellite from the U.S. The satellite is part of a $540 million project that will enable high-speed internet access in Indonesia, particularly to link up remote corners of the country to internet.
The Satria-1 telecommunications satellite lifted off on a Falcon 9 rocket from the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida on Sunday evening. Satria-1, which stands for Satellite of the Republic of Indonesia, will be operated for the government by a private company, PT Satellite Nusantara 3. The project is expected to increase connectivity inclusion by providing free internet access to 150,000 public institutions, including schools, regional government offices and health facilities. Around two-thirds of Indonesia's 280 million population already use the internet, but connectivity is limited in the country's remote, underdeveloped eastern islands.
That's all for AWANI tonight. Thanks for watching. I'm Soraya Mia, and we'll see you next time.